Okay. Hi, everybody. Time for some live coaching. I'm on two screens as usual, so I won't be looking straight at you the whole time. Let's see if I can make it a little bit easier. I have a few questions. I'm just giving it a minute for anyone who wants to be here. 3 questions this week. And I'm a little just kind of, hi, Carol. Hi, Ruthie. I'm a little slower on the uptake these days for a lot of reasons, some of which are just kind of like laughable. But the main reason is, I'm working through a depressive period. I'm looking for my own therapist. I think a lot of you are aware of that. I've been talking about it on here and writing about it on my blog, sending it in my newsletter, posting about it. So it's not a secret. Also working on finding the right medication, the right dose, the right combination of things. And then my sweet 8-year-old has this terrible tooth infection. So he's in the other room. He might interrupt us. I don't think he will, but hi, Linda. Hi, Danny. It is throwing off things like sleep and regular schedule. And it's just one of those weeks where you make plans and then the universe laughs at you, right? For thinking you can time block your day, for example. I am really happy to be here. I said this last week, and, I mean it again when I say it now, that being able to, connect is one way to put it, like help is one way to put it, but just kind of be with those of you who ask these questions and to kind of be in your lives and a little less inside of my own is just a real gift. And I wrote down the other day, this thought that came to mind was like, oh, my job is saving me yet again. And I don't mean that lightly. This work has been, hi, Annecy, this work has been such a gift from the very beginning, through my husband's deployments and through, first trimester pregnancy sicknesses and fourth trimester postpartum ups and downs, and then different depressive spells, other hard things with family, friends, freaking the last year and a half. It's really helped me to be able to do this work. So I'm so grateful for those of you who submit questions and then show up for these lives and participate or just, observe. It's really helpful to me. And my hope is that it's helpful to those of you who are asking or those of you who are here. So let's get into some questions. The first question is about reoccurring childhood trauma nightmares. Trauma therapy and tools don't stop them. What to do? So, I think this goes without saying, but I'll just say it anyway, that I can't know details, right? And I can't kind of offer a detailed response, but I'll offer what I can. And trauma therapy tools don't stop them. Excuse me. I am not an expert on dreams or nightmares by any means. I don't even know if that's a real thing that you can really be an expert on. But I am pretty confident in, well, I'll offer this with confidence. What if it's not about the therapy and the tools, but it's about safety and it's about relational healing? When there's childhood trauma, it's not always, and I don't know this person, I don't know the story, I don't know any of the details, but most childhood trauma I know happens in relationship, and it can really often result in this person, this little person, this child brain, deciding and operating from this place of believing that the world isn't safe or that people aren't safe or both. And, even if it's not in relationship, if it's not interpersonal, abusive, neglect, vicarious trauma, if the adults around you are experiencing trauma, kids can take that on. If it's not interpersonal, it can still really affect safety. And what I know about childhood trauma and see play out repeatedly with clients in both directions is that just like any other trauma, it can go in the direction of post-traumatic stress or it can go in the direction of post-traumatic growth. And with post-traumatic stress, well, I'll back up and say the deciding factor is often not the trauma itself, but the way the adults around the kid respond to the trauma. In other words, it's the stories that you're told and the stories that you internalize. So, is something like abuse traumatic inherently? Yes, absolutely. So we're not talking about whether or not this is traumatizing. It is, it's that baseline, right? But then the additional trauma and the deciding factor in terms of, is this going to take me down this stress route or take me down the growth and resilience route? The deciding factor often comes down to how were you treated in the aftermath? Were you believed? Were you taken seriously? Were you validated? Were you given, and your trauma and your experience is given space, and attention and validation the way that you specifically needed it? Often grown-ups, when their kids are traumatized, the grown-ups are traumatized. And they have their own trauma to handle, right? And so unless there are other people involved, like professionals or other really solid kind of loving caretaking figures, like extended family or family friends, there's often just too much, for one parent or two parents to handle for themselves and then also, help their children handle. So again, I don't know what happened here. I don't know the story, but I'm thinking if there are reoccurring nightmares now around this childhood trauma, that it could come back to that kind of relational wound where either it was interpersonal, abusive, neglectful, abandonment kind of trauma, or it was relational in that the aftermath of the trauma was traumatizing in and of itself, kind of based in the ways that the adults responded to you or to the trauma itself. Trauma therapy and tools don't stop them. Again, I'm not an expert in dreams and nightmares, but I kind of know enough to know that they're often not about the thing that they're about, or they seem to be about. I think it's helpful to categorize it as like a certain kind of emotional processing dream, like an anxiety dream or a fear dream or for you, trauma, maybe safety dream nightmare. And so if, again, and I'm guessing, I'm caveating a lot of this, but if it's about safety and it's about feeling safe with people, or not feeling safe with people or not feeling safe in relationships, then how can we heal that? That's kind of the question I'm curious about. And if you were my client, I would be hyper aware of helping you feel safe with me. And so you mentioned trauma therapy and tools. If you're in therapy now, I would bring that to your therapist. Like, I need to feel really safe in a relationship. And I think this is the place to start. And here's where I don't feel safe. Or if you're not in therapy, or if you just know you need a new therapist, starting with someone with that as the focus. Like, I really need to just establish an experience of feeling safe with an adult, with another person, and navigate a relationship in that healthy way. Like, again, if you were my client, I would be hyper aware of that safety. I would be addressing it every session. Like, how are we doing, right? Like, how safe are you feeling when you show up here? How have I helped you feel safe? How have I helped you feel not safe? How can I continue to help you feel more safe? And then how can I be aware of the things that hurt the safety here. I'm checking in with that pretty much every session. And then tools, I don't know what you've tried or what you're referring to when it comes to tools, but I am really interested in kind of whether or not they were short term or more kind of like deep, have a deeper focus. And if it was tools like around sleep or trauma, I think it might be kind of missing that underlying really deep safety issue. And maybe safety isn't the word, right? But something deep. And then I'm curious about your other relationships in your life outside of the one with your therapist. How safe do you feel in your adult friendships or your relationships with, siblings or other peers? And then also with people who have any sort of power or authority in your life. Like, do you feel safe with your parents or caregivers now in adulthood? Do you feel safe with people who are older than you, that have that kind of age-based authority? Any like people with any sort of spiritual, religious authority? Is there safety there? With your spouse, if you're married, or your partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, is there safety there? If you're a spouse who is a stay-at-home parent, do you feel safe with the person you're married to who also happens to be like earning the money, and has that kind of power? Again, I'm not sure what happened. I just know that most of the time childhood trauma is an abuse of power in a relationship with someone who's older, often the adult. And I'm thinking about how that might be affecting you now. And if you're not feeling safe, your brain might want to go back and kind of reprocess or even remind you of that original experience that taught you that the world isn't safe or that people aren't safe. The last thought I have is a reframe around nightmares. And I think this is helpful for anything emotional or, mental health that we are experiencing, to reframe it rather than, oh no, I don't want this. I can't have this. I got to fix it. I got to get rid of it. To just approach it with something like neutral curiosity. I mentioned this kind of depressive period I'm in, and it helps me. It doesn't cure it, right? I want to be clear. Like, it's not a quick fix, but it does help. It feels better rather than resisting, which feels worse and increases the tension. It feels better for me to get curious and be a little bit open. So what is going on here? What is this about? What is this maybe, right, doing for me? Like, what are these nightmares? What purpose are they serving? There's got to be a purpose here. Like, I know the human brain well enough to know, and you can kind of say this for yourself, right? I know my brain well enough to know that it's not trying to hurt me. Human brains aren't here to hurt me. It's trying to help me. This brain, this habit, this neural pathway that's gotten pretty well trodden exists for a reason. It's formed for a reason. So maybe it's trying to help me feel safe. Maybe it's trying to help me further process. Maybe it's trying to provide another opportunity to progress or heal. And again, I don't mean like, oh, now it feels better, or oh, now they'll go away, but just a little bit of, letting go of that kind of death grip on trying to control or quick get rid of these painful experiences, and just kind of loosen up and like hold it, rather than like gripping it and holding it, looking at it, getting a little bit curious, but also, of course, allowing for the resistance, just not acting on it, right? Allowing for, I hate this, or I can't wait for this to be over, or I wish I could go back and feel the way I used to, or remember when I was sleeping through the night and didn't have nightmares. All of that is going to be there. Then we're also going to let the reality of the nightmare be there too. And the reality of my brain doesn't just torture me. there's something in here, there's something in my knowledge about myself, about the human brain, about the mortal experience, about my spiritual self, whatever angle you kind of want to use this, but there's something in here that knows and trusts that my brain is not trying to cause me more harm. My brain is designed and wired to help. So as I look at this with that kind of reality included, that can feel better and even less heavy to hold than fighting, tensing, trying to fix, rush through, or ignore. So those are things I would consider, but with the help of a therapist. Again, if you don't have a therapist that you feel enough safety with to focus on safety, or enough connection with to ask for this specific help, like what if this is helping me? What if this is something that's trying to, in a counterproductive way, like help me heal? If you don't have a therapist that you feel like you can bring that stuff to, then just find somebody else. Shop around, move onto the next stone on this stepping path of healing. Okay, I hope that's helpful. Thank you for bringing it here. I'll be thinking about you, cheering for you from afar. Okay, I'm just checking in to see if there are any other questions or comments so far. No, hi everybody who's joined and come and go. Thank you for being here. Okay, the next question. What do you do when you feel like an idiot, like you're broken and just don't want to be here anymore? I mean, right away, like right this second, hand on chest, self-compassion, and acknowledging that to feel like an idiot, to feel broken, to not want to be here anymore is very human. It's very okay. And it's a very human form of suffering, right? So you all have probably caught on to the mantra that I learned from Dr. Kristen Neff and like to pass along to anyone who will listen, but hand on chest, this is suffering, this is human, this is okay. Those are the core kind of basic tenets of self-compassion. Just naming it. This feeling like an idiot is suffering. This feeling broken is suffering. This not wanting to be here anymore is suffering. And it's human to suffer. It's okay to be human. It's okay to suffer. And just kind of like letting it be, right? Naming it and letting it have this attention in this compassionate way. And then checking in for safety, like I touched on in the last question, safety is essential. So when you say, I don't want to be here anymore, checking around that, is there a plan? Is there an intent for self-harm? Is there suicidal ideation? Is it fantasies around death? What's really going on? And the next step is to voice it. So you're voicing it here. The next step is to voice it to somebody who's, physically near you and who you trust. So like a spouse or a therapist or a close friend. There are suicide prevention hotlines that are wonderful for this kind of thing, just to like voice it and get some processing around it. If you're not scared, if you're not feeling that fear that comes with really active suicidal intent, then it's time for scheduling a therapy session. You can't do this alone. None of us can do this alone. I've spoken on here and in, all those other formats I mentioned earlier, that suicidality is part of my kind of mental health pattern, part of the rotation. And I can't do it by myself. It's why I'm in the process of finding my own therapist. Again, it's why I'm working closely with my doctor right now. It's why I'm talking about on here, every kind of layer of support and connection is really healing. And again, it's not that it like cures these symptoms, not overnight at least, but it keeps me safe, and I want you to be safe too, this person who asked the question. But it also starts you kind of in this momentum, right? It creates some progress and some movement, so you know that this isn't going to last forever. And then feeling like an idiot, feeling like you're broken, that's stuff for therapy for sure. And specifically, it sounds like faulty core beliefs are really coming up. I love EMDR for faulty core beliefs. I love part psychology for faulty core beliefs. That's the kind of stuff I would, at least want you to be curious about. But you can't do it alone. That's the biggest thing. Like, it's time to get into a therapist in a regular way and de-isolate, unburden yourself of carrying this alone. And even, let's say you're in therapy, right? And you're talking to your trusted inner circle like every day around this. So then we need more. So a group, like a support group, or maybe you need medication if you haven't ever tried that, or a different kind of medication in addition to therapy. Or maybe it's not the right therapist, or maybe you're going twice a month and you need to go every week, right? There's always a little bit of space, and you always deserve to take up the space that you need. You always deserve to get the help that you need. All of us do. Okay, I'm cheering for you too. This is really hard. I know those feelings from the inside out, and I've heard a lot of people be with that and sit with that, and it can be really, really tricky. And at the same time, I have all the hope in the world, for you, for me, for everyone, that it's human. And one of the core human experiences is things changing. They just do. Okay. This last question, the questioner just wrote, emotional binge eating, ? Or exclamation point. I've learned so much about food and how the brain is wired around food, and how toxic so much of the messaging that comes from diet culture, but also our whole culture, and also many of our upbringings. I mean, I'm 36, born in the mid 80s. Anyone who was born within, I think, like 20 years, on either side of that has been exposed to either diet culture itself or people who are deeply affected by diet culture, right? And perpetuating diet culture. And I'm like all of the above, so I've had to learn in order to preserve my mental health and my emotional health and my relationships. I've had to learn all about this. And again, just in the theme of the last question, I could not do it alone. I've been so supported, and so lucky to have the people and the relationships and, the professional program, formal support, but also, informal, wonderful friendships. And I think the timing of my healing really timed well with a greater movement, of body acceptance, body neutrality, anti-diet, much more awareness, much more research coming out about how dieting is so ineffective and how bodies literally come in every shape and size, and that size often has nothing to do with health. There's all this stuff that's really exciting to know and learn and, operate from. Emotional binge eating, specifically, just like any coping skill, we can't expect ourselves to just stop. We have to build in other coping skills so we can transition. And I want to encourage you to expect this transition to be nonlinear, to expect this transition to be like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, to expect it to feel rocky at times. It can feel kind of like a steep roller coaster, like high highs and low lows, big wins and big losses, but eventually it evens out. And I find that focusing on those new coping skills and letting the emotional binge eating be peripheral while these new coping skills become the center of your focus is key. And then the other key right alongside that is that de-isolation piece. So who can you talk to regularly? Who can be your accountability partner for these new coping skills? Have you read like Health at Every Size? Have you read the Fuck It Diet? Have you read Intuitive Eating? Do you follow like really inspirational and well-informed dietitians and fitness experts and food freedom, coaches? Jessie Jean is the one that I went to, and her program was wonderful, and I was in it for 2 years, and it was like the best thing I ever could have done for myself in this area of my life. But there's so many people, right? Finding the right fit is huge. You want to combine knowledge with connection. And instead of emotionally binge eating and trying to stop that, we're building, right? The focus shifts. I'm building my toolbox. I'm adding to my toolbox. Maybe food is like the only thing or the most dependable thing or just the most practice thing that I have in my toolbox. I'm going to deliberately practice other things and learn about other things and add other things. So it's kind of a lot. And I gave you like 3 general things that include dozens of other things. But if you really want specific guidance, I would look up Jessie Jean here on Instagram, or Google binge eating recovery programs or binge eating recovery courses that are online. I don't think you have to go to like a residential thing. You can if you want to, right? But I don't think it's absolutely necessary. For me, it felt like I like the honeymoon period was like a month or 2 and then kind of a slump. And then I got some accountability partners and that was a high, and then a couple months of a slump. And then I like up-leveled my connection and got more open with these people and looped in some more accountability partners. And that was really great. And it was kind of steady. And by that point, I had let go of the timeline. I thought like, okay, within a year, I'll have this all under control and I'll look just the way I want to without ever trying. It was still diet culture crap. And letting go of that timeline was really big. And now I'm like, 3.5, almost, it'll be 4 years at the end of this year since I last dieted. And like 3.5 years since I last, was weighing myself and like paying attention to that as much. And then 2.5 years since I started the program, and I just finished up this May. So letting go of the timeline is really big. I would think about like, instead of the 30-day chunk of time that diet culture teaches us, it's like I started to think about a 5-year timeline. Like if this, I wasn't allowed to worry, I wasn't allowed to really engage in like self-doubt or any sort of like deliberate weight loss or anything like that for at least 5 years. And if after 5 years, I was still really 5 years of, trying, right? Like of healing work, the passive and the active and deep connection and all of that. If after 5 years of that, I still wanted to just lose weight and diet and be skinny, and that I thought that would make me happy like I used to for so long, then okay, I can go back. And I can already tell at this point that when the 5-year mark comes and goes, I won't be interested, right? But I had to give myself, at the beginning, I had to really let go of this like short timeline and remind myself like, no, 5 years, and then I can reassess. Which after 25 years of deep body shame and yo-yo on and off dieting and disordered eating, 5 years was like a drop in the bucket. That felt pretty easy. It was going to get me to like my late 30s, and I would still have 40, 50 years at least, to be free and live my life. Okay. I could talk a lot about that. I dropped a few resources in there. If you want to, follow up with any like specific questions, like what was the book you mentioned or who's the account you want me to check out, please feel free. If you're in here asking questions, let's see. Teresa, does that work for weight gain? Also, I have a friend with the opposite problem. Oh, like emotionally not eating, it sounds like. So wanting to gain weight. So, I mean, yes, in general, I think it totally would. And so with emotional eating, right, one of the kind of coping skills or accountability places for accountability is, okay, I'll use myself as an example. Like, this is really common that a lot of people who have a long history of dieting will, like, you know, skip breakfast, have a light lunch, a quote unquote sensible dinner, be starving at 9 p.m. and then eat, you know, the rest of their calories all at once, and often more because they've been restricting all day. And so, like, the pendulum like has to, you know, swing hard in the other direction and then like repeat the next day, right? And so even when I was in kind of the active refeeding phase, and I was really deliberate having like a nice big substantial breakfast, right, and a nice satisfying lunch and like a great satisfying snack, all my meals and everything, the habit was still pretty strong, like 9 or 10, especially this habit formed when my kids were little, right? And like 8 on the nose, everyone was in bed. And I just wanted to go like celebrate my freedom, right? With whatever food I was excited about. And then especially when my boys were really little and my husband was deployed and I was alone so much and kind of trapped at home, like food was the only kind of exciting thing, right? Food and TV. So I could recognize like, oh, my brain has just developed this habit and this desire, the strong desire to go, you know, eat that treat or whatever, right? The kitchen was cognitive and neurological and had nothing to do with real hunger. It was like habit hunger and habit energy and not real hunger. So for this friend of yours, or for any of you who the opposite, right? Like, oh, I stress starve, right? Instead of stress eat, or I emotionally starve instead of emotionally eat. It's recognizing, okay, this absence of the impulse to eat or this absence of the desire to eat is neurological and stress-based and also has nothing to do with my hunger. So what I started to do was kind of plan my nights and fill them up with other things, not because I'm trying to avoid eating so I can lose weight, right? But so that I can actually take care of like the loneliness or the need to have fun or the wanting to celebrate getting through, you know, another day with kids or another day at work or whatever, wanting to really relax. Like, food didn't actually do any of that for me. I thought it did, and it kind of did, right? But like at the deep level, it wasn't doing that. So what does do that? With talking to people, hanging out with my husband, reading a book, watching something like and engaging in it and not just turning on the TV and having it there, but like losing myself in a great movie. Puzzles became really fun. What else? Maybe like getting out, you know, my husband's home, like he's not deployed, right? So I can go do something. Going for a walk, maybe like working on a project. Often it was just, I just need to go to sleep. Like, I just want to go to sleep earlier, you know? So kind of getting to the core of it. So for this friend, not eating, you know, is this habit she's developed to cope with stress or emotion, but it actually increases emotion and stress because it stresses the system. Just like binge eating stresses our system, so does starvation really stress our systems. So, you know, A, it's counterproductive, really. And B, it's just about habit energy. So then C, the next step is, what new habit do I want to create? And this is where accountability was so helpful for me, helpful for everybody, is saying to your accountability partner, who it's, you know, they're just a friend, right? These are good friends, deep friendships. I would say like, all right, this week, I want to get in bed and like be done with the day by 9 p.m. And so will you all just help me stay accountable to that? And they would be like, sure, yeah. And I'm going to be, I want to finish my puzzle, you know, by Friday or whatever. Like, none of it is harsh. You know, no one's getting in trouble if we don't meet our accountability goals, but it's just vocalizing it and having that gentle, soft place to land in the relationship So, and then knowing, okay, it's 8:45, I could go turn on the TV and, eat or not eat, whatever. But if I stay up past 9, I know I'm not going to be as well rested as I want to be. I know my brain is going to work the way I want it to. I know it's going to be harder for me to be, patient and present and like my real self if I'm sleep deprived and have mind fog tomorrow. Then I also have that uncomfortable, kind of embarrassing experience of telling my friend that I stayed up too late, right? Or the uncomfortable experience about lying about it, which is, just as harmful for me and that friendship. So it just creates enough friction. And so for any habit that you want to change, it becomes such a loving gift to ourselves to loop in an accountability partner. So for somebody who's not eating enough, it's, hey, I'm going to eat breakfast every day this week. And it's going to be, at least 3 different things, right? Just kind of focusing on getting enough food. Or I'm going to eat 3 meals every day. Or I'm not going to eat less than X amount of calories, right? I think calories can be kind of tricky and triggering. That's why I like to aim for more like frequency and like eyeballing, like I'm going to eat a whole bowl of whatever. But those are different examples. And then a coach, like getting someone who really does this as their focus. Again, Jessie, like it was so good. And I'm guessing that Jessie would say, yeah, this is for anyone who's having like food trouble. But if she doesn't feel like it's quite in her like specialty, she probably would have a ton of referrals that I just don't, because it's not in my focus in my coaching work. But yeah, habits, they're interesting. Atomic Habits is a good book to read to kind of wrap the brain around habit energy. But no one can do this alone. No one. You're a good friend to ask on her behalf. You'll pass the information along. You tag her in this video or send it to her. But like for the long haul, she needs someone who really gets it and knows it well and understands it from the inside out and can talk to her regularly over, a long period of time, like a weekly coaching session or, program with community and coaching and all of that. It's really huge. Hey, thanks for asking. Thanks to all of you for asking again. It's just like the privilege of a lifetime to be able to talk about these things that make such a difference in our lives. Thank you all for being here. And I'll be here again every Tuesday. The time will be a little bit different every week, depending on different scheduling things, but I'm glad to have you all. And I'll see you here in Instagram and stories and things. And I'll be back here coaching next week. Okay. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your days. See you soon. Bye, Facebook.